Jonathan, besides being an artist and a mentor for artists and a scholar of art, working as you do with artistic journals, you're also now a pedagogue. You're a public pedagogue. I want to ask you the same question I asked you about your artistry. How do you see that? Mm-hmm. Like, how do you see that in relation to your soul? Why should people listen to you?
Why should people listen to me?
Yeah.
Well, I know, all I can say is that I know that discovering certain aspects of our tradition, certain aspects of scripture, certain aspects of a certain way of seeing the world has been of great benefit to myself, and that it has helped me heal from my materialism, move out of this kind of flat reality, to be able to see the presence of God in the world and to see these sparks, of grace, of magic that are appearing. And so, if I can share that with some people and that it helps them, it's great joy. I mean, it's an amazing joy. Every time someone comes up to me and says, I used to be materialist, or I used to be in despair or nihilist, and you've helped me to find you've been part of the way out of that, and now here I am at the church, or I'm married, or I have children, and yeah. I mean, that's amazing. Yes, it's like, who would have thought? So I find great joy in that.
So it really is from you're sharing from a sense of gratitude, a wellspring of gratitude, what's happened to you.
Yeah, but it's not just that. It's like, if I don't know where it comes from, but if I'm reading, let's say I'm reading the gospel and I see this connection to the book of Exodus, or I'm reading, or I'm looking at an icon and I see this thing from Revelation that pops in, and I can see it. I mean, it's like I'm excited.
Yes.
And for 10 years, 15 years, I was basically on my own. I was just experiencing it on my own. My brother and I would exchange emails and we would talk about this stuff, but it was almost as if I couldn't talk about this. I don't know why people didn't understand, but something's changed, and it's not under my control. It's just something that's changed, and all of a sudden, secular people, for some reason, are now capable of understanding these things. It's like I can talk about St. Maximus, or the idea of the logi, and all of a sudden, even people who are atheists, they know what's going on. And so I think there's a shift that happened in culture.
Yes.
That none of us control.
Well, I want to develop this concept of the uniqueness of the present moment.
Yeah, I do believe
and have you hear about it. But before we do, I also want to know what you just said about how you did this for years. I think you said 15 years.
At least, yeah.
That's a long time. You're storing up this collection. It seems to me very, very natural that you're building this experience. You're having this experience of discovery, of a form of revelation from God. You're applying it to yourself, and then the time comes where God says, now, please, son, I want you to share the things I've been sharing with you.
Yeah.
There's a parallel, in the Old Testament, the great scribe Ezra, who was involved in bringing the people back to, after the exile, to the Holy Land, and reorienting them spiritually and helping them prepare to rebuild the temple. There's a description of his life that just came to my mind listening to it. It says that he devoted himself to the study of the law of God, to its practice, and to teaching its statutes to God's people Israel. I've always thought that was an incredible progression. I don't know what the time movements were in his life, but he did it for himself first. He just made this self-discovery. He interacted with God. He studied, and then he applied it to himself, and then he taught it. I've always thought that in the lives of the saints, that's such a beautiful model, that they became pedagogues when they had first sought God and learned to live a godly life. St. Anthony the Great, right? He went into the desert to be with God, and then he became the teacher of the world. St. John Chrysostom, he went to Mount Silpios for 6 years. He never thought he was going to come back. He says in his book on the priesthood that he spent his days studying scripture, memorizing scripture, and he spent his nights praying. He didn't lay down flat once. He tied a little rope around his waist. He was so enthused. He was so excited. He didn't want to sleep. So he tied himself to the wall so that he would sleep for short periods of time, but not fall over.
That's amazing.
But look at that. Look, I mean, it's not coincidence that we have a river of life coming from his mouth, watering 17 generations of Christian people, full of, I think there's 11,000 direct quotations in his sermons from the Old Testament, some 7,000 from the New, all from memory.
Right, that's amazing.
Because of the same principle. Do you think there's anything, a legitimacy in that concept in your life?
I mean, all I can say is that the discovery of the language in the icons, and that language in connection to scripture, and I know that it was a huge part of my own, how can I say, that it was a love that I couldn't extinguish, right? When I discovered the medieval language, and when I discovered the representation of the icons, I would go to the library and just spend all day. I would just pile up the books, and I was like, and go, and then I started cataloging them, like, okay, Ascension, what's in the Ascension? And like this, and look at 1,000 versions of the Ascension, so that at some point the language just starts to seep into you, and you're not even thinking about it anymore. But to me, it wasn't an effort at all. Like, at least at that time, it was just it was as if I was feeding myself. Right?
Some
it was like,
irresistible quest.
It was. That's what it was, for sure. And so I don't have a lot of. I don't feel like that I have something that it's, how can I say that it's not something that I can brag about. It's just something that happened. Like I loved it, and without that I might not be Christian.
Yeah.
Right? It's like at some point it had to break, because either I had to live this language, it had to be real for me, or what am I doing here? You know? And so yeah.
Patristic Nectar Publications is pleased to present Enduring Love, Laying Christian Foundations for Marriage. Marriage preparation, together with the sacred institution itself, has fallen on hard times in the post-Christian West. It is more important than ever for couples to saturate their hearts and minds with the glorious vision of holy matrimony presented by the Church in holy tradition and lived by countless saints. Here in these pages, couples will find inspired teaching from the Holy Scriptures, the writings of the Holy Fathers, and the service text of the sacrament itself on how to live in a genuinely Christian marriage in which the home becomes a domestic church. Through enduring love, may God inspire the hearts of those preparing to be married, and also those already married who would like to deepen their union and render it more pleasing to God. Available now at Amazon and Barnes & Noble.